The Secret Life of Ashley Brown by George Fitzgerald. First published as a whole book in 2016. This is the audio version with slight alterations through the whole story. Ash, Chapter 1, Dublin, 2010. South of Swords there is a park called Ward River Valley. The river rises near Kilbride and flows through Brackenstown, running along the banks of the Swords Park. On hot days the water is cool, not cold, never warm. A dirt path that resembles something from a Mark Twain book cuts between the giant trees. I often envision Tom Sawyer and his pals walking in front of me as they head towards the same spot, the part that curves into a pool. The branches of the trees that mark one side dip into the water for a drink. Individual branches, fresh and green, their eyes gazing at their own reflection. The reflection is like something from a Van Gogh painting. It is here my feet stand still, the water invading the bank washes over them. I'm invisible to the fish swimming beneath the surface. Every day for the past 6 months, I show up here. The morning is crisp, the sun has slipped behind the clouds like a child, hiding under her mother's apron, vanishing as if gone forever. I come to bathe my feet. Don't ask me why I do that. When I'm here, I go back to those once upon a time places. We have them, you know. The places in our mind that brings us about. For many they are the best of times, for others the worst. People say you were born once. I was born the second time when that bullet missed my head. Remembering the coughing yells from a woman who ran towards me, she lodged her feet to the ground in such a way you'd think they grew there. Run, me dear, run for your life. Run I did. I have a few secrets. If I'm to tell anyone my deepest ones, I best tell them to God. On the bank this morning, I decided I might as well disclose them to you. I dried my feet, put on my shoes and walked back to the car. Opening the door, I turned the key, let the handbrake down and drove home. Christmas was a week away and the tree was still in the box. Rushing around, my mind went into autopilot. Gosh, I thought, Mum and Dad will be here for dinner and I haven't even a window washed. I need to get some shopping. Jumping back into the car, I took my phone from my pocket and placed it onto the holder and drove to the shops. It rang. I answered the call. Hi, Ma'am. Ashley, dear. Your father and I will be late tonight as he has one of his meetings. Okay, Ma'am, I said, turning the motor around the corner. Now, don't overcook things. Your father hates his food overcooked. Don't worry, Ma'am. Everything is under control. I lied. Excellent. Oh, and he wants to know if you want that cooker he saw. No, Ma'am, I've got one. That's old, Ashley, dear. Ma'am, it works. Ashley, you need a new one. Ma'am, I moaned, heading towards the M50. There will be no more said on the matter. Now back to your father and his dinner. What are you not to do? Overcook, Ma'am. I got it. Excellent. Right. Can't have you holding me up. I've things to do. See you later. And remember, no overcooking. The next sentence I mouthed in unison with her. Your father hates his food overcooked. This was the first Christmas for my husband and me in our new home. We had bought it some 10 months before. Gosh, where does the time go? It was old, spacious dwelling with high ceilings and hard timber floors, not forgetting the drafts. The kitchen was unfashionable, and the decorators must have put up the wallpaper somewhere between the Irish Rising and the Second World War. There had been a lot of redecorating, like plastering and painting, retiling, fixing leaky taps and replacing the scullery. After buying the property, we stayed in my parents', which is an interesting time, begging, borrowing and saving until we got the money for the refurbishments. During the refurbishments, I spent my time in the department store shopping for the necessities like towels, cups and saucers. The furniture arrived and finally the house was in order. After I got home with the shopping, I opened the box and dragged the tree into the sitting room. I pondered on all that we had accomplished. Now, the phone in my pocket rang. Answering it, the caller said, "Hello, how's it going?" "Good. I think I have the lead. The one Frankie's searching for, Pitbull." "Brilliant. Yes, but I only hope whatever I find, Frankie will be pleased." "He will, because no matter what you find, it'll bring closure." "Yes, I'm sure you're right, Pitbull. Good work and thanks for everything." "No problem. Talk to you soon. Bye." The phone went dead and I sat drinking tea, musing over what Pitbull had said. After I swallowed the tea, I got up with a knife, opened the box and began to put the tree up. "Oh, by the way, my name is Ashley Brown. Later on I'll tell you more about myself. But for now, just let me tell you why a middle-class woman is taking a phone call from a man called Pitbull." The whole adventure kicked off some time ago, and yet I think it started even before that. Forgive me for not making myself clear. What I'm trying to say is, this adventure thing, as I call it, got going the day the man came into our lives. I first saw Pitbull after he'd been invited as a guest speaker to a college I was attending. Soon my friend also attended there. We'd become very close since getting back from London. She was studying visual communications while I went back to college to get my degree in fine arts. Pitbull was nothing like I'd imagined. He was short and sturdy. His raven hair crowned a ruggedly handsome face. Yet it was his eyes that caught my attention. They were sharp and focused. But at least that's what I thought, wondering if the others thought the same. When I say the others, I'm referring to the women because I don't think the men would think such things. On that morning, Pitbull was on fire. His words had power that could straighten out every crooked road in your life. At once he set the emotional tone, which was intense, sobering, leaving some of us in tears. After listening to his testimony, I no longer questioned why anyone would call themselves Pitbull. I understood. Then he told us about his friend, an old man called Frankie. I had little choice but to pretend that these archived memories were familiar to my ears. I recalled my own history, which was not without its dark moments. Pitbull's expository tale covered his life growing up in Finglas, and Frankie's wretched experience in inner city Dublin in the late 30s and 40s. The man's words captivated me. They were strong and full of conviction, with a redemptive power of bringing understanding, not judgment. He ended with a poignant sentence when he said this: "All Frankie ever wanted was to know who his father's real identity." Or may I just say it this way: all Frankie ever wanted was to know who his real father was. Something stirred in me because he spoke into a desire of mine. I felt my gifting was, after studying history, exactly that, history and studying it. I'd finished my bachelor's degree in English and history, leaving college that was now, or it seemed like now, a lifetime ago. My love for antiquity came through my appreciation for fine arts and the works of the masters. Rembrandt fascinated me. He had skillfully used the dry point, resulting in an overture of over 290 etchings. When I was younger, I visited Rembrandt's house, which opened to the public in 1909. Not that I went there in 1909, you get my drift. 25 years before Frankie was born. Frankie's life was summed up in this way. Nightmarish, would be saying it mildly. Sad would be saying it blandly. Victorious would be slightly understating it. My mind was inundated with questions as the class broke for lunch. As we entered the cafeteria, may I say, I found Pitbull. He stood soaking in conversation while curiously sipping tea. I tried to grab his attention by walking in front, sliding behind, nearly knocking the cup out of his hand, but had little effect. I wasn't the only one wanting to talk to him. Later, he nodded to us and approached us, shaking Sue's hand and then mine. Up close, he looked much younger than I first thought. I recalled that story he told, which was disturbing, a narrative that got sort of lost in the tale of telling Frankie's one. So I got straight down to business by asking many questions. I saw the look in Sue's face, which said, "Here, leave it out. Let the man come up for air." But I ignored the obvious facial expressions and kept my tongue moving like a tormented wasp. "She's fascinated with the subject," Sue blurted. I tried to give her a little hint by slight movement of my eyes. Wide open, smiling but full of deadly venom. She ignored me. A slight pinch had little result because she continued chatting. So with no other alternative left, I just calmly said, "I'll find him. I'll find Frankie's father." The way Pitbull looked at me, I felt as if he was the only one who heard me. That wasn't until I turned and stared at Sue, and by the peering eyes and the shaking head, I knew she heard me too. Ash, the coffin ship that took Frankie's grandfather to the States, if that was the case, didn't write his name down in a little red book, said the interfering voice. "Oh, and how do you know that was the case, and how do you know his grandfather was there? Were you on the boat?" Nodding her head, she pushed her eyes to the ceiling. "No, and you know that, but what? But that was a long time ago, Ash, and I don't think you have the time to go searching for a man who left Ireland like, say, 100 years ago. Slow down, girls, that's all I'm saying. Look, I've only met you and you appear to be good friends, so just drop the tension," Pitbull said. I could see that Pitbull didn't want to get involved in a woman's squabble, but his face lit up when he saw my enthusiasm had not faded. What ensued next was a war of words spoken in whispering tones. He ran for coffee, Sue ran for cover, and I ran to the ladies' room. When we emerged again, there was more handshakes. Cam returned, and the search began. I had just picked up a new job description. I was the go-getter, the person who might find Frankie's father, or may I say, his father's real identity. However, first, I needed to uncover a Dublin I never knew existed. Chapter 2. No one told me about the historical Dublin I discovered. I approached the subject like a detective, searching the catacombs of antique bookshops and libraries, turning pages of old ledgers and the works of printed people who had done those works in the early part of the last century. To be honest, the plight of the Dublin folk left me dumbfounded. Sometimes I cried, but mostly I was aghast. The blame did not lie with the people, but with the cruel, unjust system. Dublin was noted for having the worst slums in Europe. This became clear after studying various articles. I could see why reporters of that time branded it with such a horrid name. With ravishing impulse, I gazed at every photo in books, including pictures of the Monto and the impoverished streets north and south of the river. The information I was reading was as follows. There were 7,000 tenement buildings housing 100,000 citizens. The images crossed my mind like slideshow, stone and brick constructions with ragged people sandwiched between derelict homes and cathedrals where rich folk came out unhappy because of their unpolished shoes. In the tenement world, thousands of mothers' lives were penned in loud shouts, beatings, kisses, and grandmothers and scoldings from priests. Many fathers operated the docks, spoke the words and were silent by the stevedores and the Point of Ruby, as they called it back then, a history hidden behind ruined buildings heaped between the Rising and the Civil War. Sitting by the fire, I recalled what Frankie and Pitbull told me concerning their lives. It was a solitary moment, where I constructed every idea as if it was a book, or as if I was a writer. Why a writer? There's now talk of writing stories into books. The interpretation came as one thought was saying, "Don't do this." Another was saying, "Come on, go for it." So with some effort, I put away negative ideas and placed on my going forward head. This encouraged me to share my tale. So I wrote the first chapter, scanning my work as if it was coming into some public service. The job was harder than I expected. I was critical of my work. The story I had in my head was not coming together on paper. My goal was to scribble 1,000 words a day. Hard task. In my former life, I was a book editor in a major publishing house. However, editing a book and writing one is like the difference between plastering a wall and painting it. A million titles whizzed around my head. At the end of the night, a tiresome one, I wrote the title, the manuscripts. I printed it and fired it on the table. I wondered what style of writing the men used. They didn't move in academic circles. My original goal was identifying Frankie's father. Now it got lost in the frustrating quest to find the right words and correct sentences. However, after some trial and error, we had our first meeting to touch base and see where everybody was going. It was a February morning. The aroma of the coffee hit me as soon as I walked in the door, and the sound of the streets fell into a sleepy hush with the closing of that door. The room was lit up by overhanging lights, while the sun thumped the window like a Halloween banger. I remember seeing Pitbull and Frankie sitting at the table. Frankie had a cap on his head. Pitbull had the sides of his hair cut very short, shaven. He was wearing a goatee. Straight away, we jumped into our conversation as to how we could possibly approach this project. I just sat and stared into space. And I stared longer and longer until I almost forgot why I was there. Chapter 3. As I listened, my mind drifted into a lovely place. And on reflection, I knew what I wanted more than anything else. I longed for warm fires and nights in, having snacks while watching my favourite soaps. Then to Facebook friends and chat online, nothing more, that was it. The dream life, wrapped in normality. That borderline boredom, the reward of being a member of the Joe Soap Squad. Thank you very much. My heart was not in it. I didn't want to write a book. I'd lived in the fast lane, a lane of nothing but brokenness and a bullet flying past my head. I wondered why I was there. The men were talking, but I was drifting from the conversation. I looked around at the rectangular room. The walls were finished in crazy plastered humps and bumps and timber floors and dark brown. A man in the corner was having a little bit of a smoke and coughing away. He looked towards me. I caught his glance, caught his gaze. "How are you?" he said in a Dublin accent. "Hello." Nailed to the beams were apple boxes. On the walls, sanded and varnished, acting like shelves. In them were old books, colourful mugs and rolled the magazines, the type women loved. "Penny for them," Frankie said. Pause. "Sorry, Frankie." Frankie spoke like a gentleman. He had that Dublin brogue. I understood that I was a companion of individuals who were, one time, thieves. Men who were associates of jailers who together walked under the shadows of what would have been the gallows. Frankie picked up on what I was thinking. How he did that, I don't know. Maybe it was the look on my face. Maybe it was the way I was gazing around. Maybe it was the yawn I gave here and there. But he just said, "Listen, love. Your past is behind you. The The ghost of Christmas past won't be knocking on your door. No, it'll knock on mine, joked Pitbull. This is my account, Frankie retorted. Frankie's history was interesting. It started in 1935 in New York, the place of his birth. He told us about the streets, the prisons, the horrid crimes, and a woman called Daisy May. That part of the story caught my interest. Later he talked about the trials. Could I examine the transcript from the courts in that particular case, I said, cutting across him. That's not a problem, he replied. Okay then. Why do you want to see them? Inquired Pitbull. I don't know you guys that well, and if I have to go on this hunch that I'm having, I think that you are going to ask me to push forward and write you our books. Is that what I'm thinking? If I agree, by the way, and I'm not saying I am, I need to distinguish what exactly it is I am writing and what exactly is already written about particular people, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, I get it. Truth, Frankie interrupted. Yeah? Know the truth and the truth will set you free, jested Pitbull. Okay. 2 coffees later, the meeting was over, and I dashed across town in search of transcripts from the courts back in 1977. I felt like a woman from a film. The next emotion I felt was one of fear and excitement, all together, mingling together. What am I saying? I was all over the place. At least I was in control. Yes, I was in control. I was the one driving this roller coaster. I was leading it in front, and I was in absolutely control of everything. What that meant was I could at any moment pull the brake and get off. Now, getting court transcripts is a big problem. The Section 48 Freedom of Information Act, unless you have direct contact with the case, there's no chance of obtaining a court order. So what was Frankie saying when he said, "That's no problem"? I wondered what it was he was saying. Chapter 4. The evening was cold. I climbed into the car, turned on the engine, and put the heat up full. The radio was playing my favourite song. I glanced in the mirror and saw how my makeup looked tired and my hair was in knots. However, I knew how to do a background check on the men. I hope I don't bump into anyone. I look a fright, I thought. I leaned forward, clapped the steering wheel and said, I only pray I'm doing the correct thing here. Raindrops dripped on my head as I left the car and approached the National Library. On the second floor there is the searchable archives from newspapers and documented writings, aged tabloids. So, if there were stories about Frankie and Pitbull written in the paper, I was in the right place to find them. I took my coat off, flung it over my arm and raced up the stairs. The curved stairway led to the Doom reading rooms. The horseshoe-shaped room rose 50 feet in height, lit by central dome and side windows. Above them was the plaster cherubim. I looked up, and when I went searching for old articles according to the dates then, my eyes were fixed on the computer. Frankie had given me dates, and within minutes scrolling through the pages on the computer, I found the headline. And this is what it read. Evening, 10th of June, 1977. Armed robber opens fire on guards. Detectives say an attempted robbery took place in Dublin earlier today when a local man armed with a shotgun attempted to open fire on surveillance officers during a botched robbery in the capital city. The man is named locally as Frank Smith, age 42. He is well known to the guards. What followed was a high-speed chase in which Frank Smith evaded capture. He is a dangerous man and should be approached with care. If anyone has any information about his whereabouts, please contact the guards at Store Street Station. Pitbull's picture was spread across the front page of another paper. I paused. centering every idea running across my mind. It took a few moments or minutes for everything I was reading to sink into my head. And those thoughts went sinking down into my head like an anchor that plunged into the ground. And I was stuck for a moment in that chair. This project started off with a man's quest to find his father's identity. I may have run up those stairs, but after searching into Frankie and Pipple's life briefly, I crept away thinking, no thanks. Think I might give the whole thing a wide berth. These men were dangerous. Maybe they had changed, or perhaps I was a little gullible little girl who believed that a big bad wolf was a nice little doggy with a few anger problems. Splashing onto Dawson Street, I ran towards the parking lot. I was livid. The night was inching in and the traffic was heavy. There was a policeman in the corner. Cars were beeping. People were walking. A truck screeched outside of a restaurant. The exhaust coughed out steel blue smoke. Music could be heard dancing out onto the street from an open window. The small Italian-looking man wiped his brow, shouting furiously at the truck driver, slamming the window shut before I could take another glance at what it was he wanted or what it was he was arguing about. And when I got to the car, what did I do? I sat for a moment. That moment was long, and I wondered what it was I was actually doing at all. I don't think I can go here, I thought. Who are these men really? Chapter 5. Frankie's story flashed across my mind as I drove home. Not that I'd left. I was furious with myself. I hated committing to something and then trying to square my way out of it. I felt like a coward, one of those make a drama of everything people, which, by the way, that's exactly who I was. One voice in my head said, it'll be okay, go on, go on, go on. That voice sounded like the character of Mrs. Doyle in Father Ted's TV show. The other voice said, don't be a fool. Of all the stupid things to get into, Ashley. That voice sounded like my mother. When I stopped the car, my head was in a spin. Oh, the men rang later, oh yes. And I put on the I'm interested chat. However, I was frightened. I had met these guys before, or people like them when I lived in London. My history was guiding my thinking, the warning voice from my past, declaring, you've been here before, Ash. It was a different town, but the same people. Remember those times, those people that came with their smiling faces? As the saying goes, beware of those bearing gifts. We remained in touch, but it was all formal and I kept my distance. They, however, given their rob a bank mentality in their former lives, picked up on it. So the following calls were dealing with how they had changed, and I was handed the reassurance I needed. This was the middle of the road time. I didn't know what to do. Anyway, before we knew where we were, summer was creeping towards us, and not a chapter in sight. Like most things in life, the seasons melted by. I have a son. He's 9 years of age. I always thought I'd be that type of mother who would stay at home, telling the children stories while sitting them on my lap. Anyway, at 9 years of age, he's a bit big for him sitting on my lap. He was away in France with his grandma. His grandma, my ma's mother, she loved bringing him on holiday with her. She had a really special place for him in her heart. There's a photograph of me on the wall in my early 20s. The photo was captured in London. I was dressed in a white top, tight skirt. In my hand was a wine glass. The background was blurred. Sarah, a friend, had taken that picture. She had her own story to tell, one we'll get to later. If I looked at that picture once, I looked at it 1,000 times until boredom set in. I had to admit that the stay-home life was not all that was cracking up to be when I was there by myself. Well, for me at least. so no amount of writing and planning early morning coffee-induced ideas could fill up my day. I took a part-time job in a clothing store after my college had finished. My college course, the adult course that I had done, and I had moved on and got my degree in fine arts. My friend Sue got me the position. She worked in a coffee shop a few doors down the street. Sue and I had met in the morning, as we have done, and sat outside and chatted if the weather was warm. Then I would make my way over to the shop and listen to the owner rambling on about this, that, and her little cat called Cuddles. Her name was Mrs. Louisa Anna Branson. She told me that she was first cousin to Richard, but I had my doubts. Dealing with her was one thing, but her understudy, he was another circus clown. His name was Cecil Oliver Alcott. His eyes widened at anything that passed him in a skirt, and his lips would work themselves into a kissing position. Not killing, kissing position. Behind every customer's back with winks and hand gestures. He was a type of disgusting man, really. He had a thuggish appearance and built like a cage fighter. His manner was right up there with his looks. Mrs. Louisa had a cat. He had a dog. The smallest creature I'd ever seen. The lead he used was that long the dog could have crossed the English Channel and still be in Hans' grip. He named him Pickles. The dog's full name was Master Pickles, if you please. The dog was never to be allowed taken into the shop until her ladyship was not there, which was a lot because she was the globetrotter that bullshitted her way across the earth at the speed of a scrabbling rooster. Him, of course, Mr. Bulldozer as I call him, came into the shop with Mr. Pickles in one hand, or Master Pickles may I say, and a bunch of flowers in the other. He wanted to rearrange the front. He said flowers always make customers feel right at home. The question I had was, why would anyone want to feel right at home when they're out shopping? You'd think that the customer would want to feel at home, I asked. Yes, you don't? He gave a tight smile. In the absence of her ladyship, he took out a cigarette. Sticking it on a long white tip, he pranced about the shop as if he was preparing for Fashion Week in Paris. Then that single glass object that he had came out of his pocket and he placed it on his eye and walked around, feeling really chuffed with himself. The shop was filled with mingling scents of flowering perfume and smoke. However, when he placed the flowers in a vase by the window and pulled back the curtains, I saw the beauty of the day. In a beaming ray of light, it caught the scene perfectly. The rise in smoke amidst the flowers and the shadows by the curtains formed shapes like branches from the tree. A memory flashed across my mind, strangling every other thought I had. Has that ever happened to you? You are there going about your day, talking, walking, maybe walking, when suddenly a memory pops into your head. You never invited it in, nor did you ask for it. You didn't go searching for it. It just presented itself. It's like you rewinded a tape to view your past when you didn't do it at all. No, these memories came interrupting the moment, freezing me, colder than a block of ice. Well, there I was, stiff as a door, examining the vision, its swiftness. There was motion in it. I remember my time in London, the roar of the city, the stillness of those long nights. Clasping my hand over my mouth, I gasped, "Oh, thank God, I'm here." Chapter 6. It was in that moment that the idea of writing a book took on a whole new meaning. It was for me the first time that I actually took it serious. The idea, that is. And all it took was a day in the shop, with sunlight, flowers and an ugly mutt called Master Pickles. Arriving home, I showered, jumped into something nice, more comfortable, and fell asleep on the chair. I woke at 7. 10 seconds before the door opened and my husband came in to the room. "What's for dinner?" he asked, kissing my cheek. "Sorry, I dozed off there. How about coffee first?" "Coffee sounds grey." I made coffee and we sat at the fire. A lot had happened over the last 12 years. So I took a moment of reflection and then began to study that horrible tragedy that we avoided. I had avoided a lot of them, and of course, the blessings that now enveloped me. Frankie had finished his story. I had the manuscripts and I thought it was brilliant. He didn't need me to write for him, as I thought. It inspired me to write. My husband knew what was on my mind. He saw how I made inroads, but my mind was still where there was a lot of questions and thoughts and ideas. "Do you want to do this?" he asked. Write my story?" Yes, I think so." "Do you think it's wise?" "Wise? Yeah, exposing, the stuff." "I think so. I mean, if I can help one person, it'd be worthwhile. Don't you think?" "Okay, but maybe, remember, it's not some story where the beautiful teenager gets a kiss from a handsome boy. Maybe that's how it should have been, but sadly it wasn't." "I know that. I talked to Mum and Dad. They said if it can help someone else and rid them of the stuff what took place there, well, that'd be good, wouldn't it?" "Okay, whatever you want to do, I'm with you." On that note, we embraced and kissed. Well, I'll be ladylike and say no more. Later, in front of a blazing fire, I read Frankie's story, but I'd read it several times. A question arose. How do you write your second draft, polished, ready for the publisher? Strange question to come from a person who had edited scores of them. Okay, let me see. Let me be first person to talk. Here. Okay, let me just think about this now. No, I think I'll have a coffee, something writerish about coffee, some music, a blank page and a computer. With any luck and a lot of determination, I will have my own printed manuscript. With the coffee made and the music playing, I stared at the computer, remembering Frankie's words. Write at least 1,000 words per day. A tall order, I mused. Well, people said, just start and keep going, don't give up. That's the key. 2 men I knew, now close to 4 years after people had popped into our life-changing class during 2007. My time had flew by. I looked at the keyboard as if somehow it could magically write by itself. My gaze was a dispassionate one. I stayed there for a long time until my fingers dived from the keyboard. I walked the floor. This is what they call writer's block. The only problem is you have to be a writer to have that block. Sipping the coffee, I stared out the window, feeling a stab of self-pity as to why I couldn't come up with even the first sentence. Then it hit me, something that I had told every single writer that sat in front of me when I was an editor. Keep it simple. 1 sentence, 1 paragraph, 1 chapter at a time. Those words fought off discouragement. Rubbing my hands together, I placed my finger on the keyboard and began. I think I too have a story, one you might be interested in. You might be interested in hearing about the blonde-headed girl or boyfriend, the streets of Dublin, the streets of London, roaring like a lion, that young girl running as the bullet missed her head. But as I put pen to paper, Pitbull does the same. So as I end this short story now, I say Slán Lat. And I'll meet you on the other side when I tell you the story that's called The Secret Life of Ashley Brown. Bye for now.